Alright then my friends, so in this lesson we're going to set up a new Supabase project and we're going to connect to that project from our front-end React application. So the first thing you want to do is head to supabase.com and you want to sign up for a free account by clicking sign in. Now when you do that, it's going to ask you to sign in with GitHub, so you do need a GitHub account to do this. So once you've done that, you need to authenticate with GitHub, and then when you've done that, it's going to redirect you to your project dashboard. Now at the minute, you can see I've got one project here. You won't have anything, and in fact it might ask you to set up a new organization. So just fill out that quick form and save it, and then you want to select new project. Choose the organization, and then we can select a project name. So I'm going to call this Super Smoothies, like the website name. A database password, we can generate one and copy it if you like, and then down here choose a location. After you've done that, the free tier, create new project, and then when you've clicked that, it's going to in the background create this project for us. It might just take a few minutes. Alright, so we can see it's still setting up the project, but if we scroll down here, we need a couple of things. We need our API keys, which is still generating, but also this URL. So we can copy this URL and paste that into Notepad or something like that for now, and also copy this public API key right here. All right, so you want those two things. We're going to need those two things to connect to this project from the backend. And if we scroll up, we can see, yeah, it's still setting up the project, but probably within about 30 seconds, it's going to complete this and you'll see a few more details about your project. But for now, the only things we need are this, a non-public key, and this URL right here. Okay, so copy this and this. Okay, so those two things we just copied, the API key and the URL, we're going to use both of those to connect to the project from this React project. Now, we're going to store those in environment variables. So let's create over here a new file, and that's going to be a .env file to store the environment variables in. Now, we're going to call these two different things. So we have React _app _Supabase _URL. So all of the different environment variables in a React app have to be prefixed with this. We set that equal to something, and then down here, React _app, and then this one is the anon _key, and I'm going to set that equal to something as well. Now I'll paste in the key, we have that, and then if I just open up my notepad, I'm going to copy the URL and paste that in there as well. So now we have those environment variables, which we can use in other files now inside this project, and we'll do that shortly. Alright then, so now we've done that, the next thing we want to do is install Supabase, the client library. And we're going to use that then to connect to the backend. So to do that, open up a terminal and type npm install, and it's at Supabase, spell this correctly, and then /Supabase-JS. Now, as I'm recording this, they're releasing a new version of Supabase, and it's just a release candidate at the minute, so it's not fully done. However, if you want to try out that new version, you can add @RC right here and press enter. I'm going to use version 1, but I will be mentioning where there's changes and differences with version 2 as I go along so that you can follow it if you're using version 2 as well. But those changes are minimal. So for now, just press enter to install this version of Supabase. Now, while that's installing, I just wanted to come back over here to the project dashboard, which should look something like this now when it's finished initializing. So you can see all the different services that we can use. But more importantly, I wanted to show you how we can connect the front end to the back end using a bit of code and that client library. So if we go over here to the left to where it says API and click on that, it's going to give us a code snippet at the bottom of this page to do just that. And it's this thing right here. So first of all, we import this function, create clients, from the Supabase library. Then down here, we have our Supabase URL and Supabase key. Those are the two things that we're storing in environment variables. And then we pass those in to this create client function as arguments. First the URL, then the key. And we're storing the response inside this Supabase constant. And that's what we're then going to use in the future to communicate with Supabase on the backend to do things like interact with the database. Okay? So then, let me copy this code snippet right here. And then back in our project, we can close this and go to our source folder. I'm going to create a new folder over here called config. Now, you don't have to do this. This is just my preference, but you can put this file wherever you want. But inside this, I'll create a new file called Supabase client.js. And then I'm going to paste in this code. So we import that function first of all. Then we have our two things, the URL and the key. Now what I'm going to do is just rename this thing because we didn't call it Supabase key. So let me go to the environment variables, and we called it the React app anon key. So let me grab that and I'm going to paste it in here. And then same for this, I'll get rid of this, which is hard coded, and I'll say process.env dot, and then let me grab the React app Supabase URL and paste it in right here. So now we're invoking this function and passing those two things in to connect to the backend, and we have this Supabase constant now, which we're going to use in the rest of our project later on. So what I'm going to do is one more step. I'm going to say export default and then Supabase. Now, at the minute, this file is not going to do much. It's not going to connect to anything because we're not running the file. So inside the home component, what I've already done is I've imported that Supabase constant from the Supabase client file. You can see we come out of the current folder, pages, into the config folder, and then into the Supabase client file. And we grab that export Supabase. And then when the home component is rendered, I'm logging it to the console, this Supabase object, just so we can see it in the console. So now we've done that, let's check it out in a browser. So I've just tried doing that and I got an error, and that's because inside Supabase client, I misspelled Supabase. So correct that. And also, by the way, you will need to restart your development server down here, so you can cancel out of the process by pressing Control-C and then run npm start again, purely because we've installed that new library, Supabase. So if you get an error because of that, restart the server and then it should be fine. So over here in the browser, we can see this Supabase client object right here. And inside there are all these different properties. So we're going to be using this Supabase client object to interact with the backend later. In particular, we're going to be interacting with the Supabase database. And I'm going to show you how we can set that up and fetch data from it in the next lesson.